We've got people who are coming into this country who are avowedly against British values. No, they came here illegally. They've broken our laws, they've broken our rules, they've jumped the queue. I think you have to go back a couple of generations before you can truly call yourself English, like the Japanese do. I would consider myself to be British Asian.
It's hard for me because I always just saw myself as English. I wouldn't say British. That feels like a sort of passporty, airporty thing. It feels like my culture English.
Strong countries have a strong identity. We first need to define what it is, and we are struggling to agree on the definition at the moment. Immigration was far too high, and it was out of control.
Why were we bringing in so many people?
I spoke to the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, I spoke to then Rishi Sunak, and I said, listen, we've got a crisis. And despite months of pleading, banging my head against the brick wall, begging, Liz Truss didn't want to do it, Rishi Sunak didn't want to do it. Why didn't Prime Minister Rishi Sunak want to cut immigration?
We've actually got Nigel behind that door. Nigel, come on, mate. If Nigel came out of that door now and said, Suella, come on, it's time, what would you say? I know it's annoying when creators ask you to subscribe, but since I started, the channel's grown 10 times faster. If you don't sub, YouTube probably won't show you the next episode. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Hit subscribe. Straight away, I can see you're quite a normal person. And that's funny because most politicians, and I don't want to name names, but they're not that normal. Do you find that when you meet some of them?
I do get a lot of, you're much nicer in person than the media image. I do get a lot of that.
That wasn't what I was saying, by the way.
Right.
I wasn't saying you don't seem, I thought you might be nice anyway.
And I think a lot of politicians get that. I think the media can caricature politicians and reduce them to very kind of simplistic, cartoonish, good or bad caricatures. And so no one's like that. Everyone's got a bit of good and a bit of bad in them. So yeah, I think, it would be good. And this is why long form interviews actually, and the kind of explosion of podcasting, I think has been very good for politicians to actually sit down and talk honestly and freely about their views in a more human way.
Yeah, because it's the human thing, isn't it? But sometimes I've met these people in real life when we're not recording and stuff, and they still seem like sort of robot-y people.
Oh, there I was trying to say all politicians are actually nice, and there you go. Even when the cameras are off, they're still odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I think it takes a different kind of person to put themselves forward for public office and get into politics. It's not an easy world. It's a huge honour and privilege to be elected by your fellow citizens to sit in Parliament or on a local council. But when you put your head above the parapet, you're going to invite criticism, you're going to invite scrutiny. That's right. And so therefore being a politician requires quite a thick skin. And I think that can kind of affect politicians' personality sometimes.
Sometimes a bit of maybe autism. That's just my experience, but you don't have to respond to that.
I wouldn't. I'm not aware of that observation.
Yeah.
But
so I wanted to speak to you because I saw a brilliant video you did about leaving the ECHR, and the reason what I like to do on the show sometimes is to break things down in real simple terms, because I find myself, even though I do this show and it's all about politics, people start saying, "Oh, we've got to leave the ECHR," and I'm going like, I don't know what that is, what it means. And I think you spell it out really simply for people who are also a bit like, I've been left behind by this and what it means. But and you did a great video on that. But before we get into that, we were just having a chat off screen that I think is quite interesting about Englishness, because you were saying, well, what were you saying about on that debate?
Yeah, well, I think in recent months there's been a little bit of an online debate about what it is to be English. And I don't know what prompted me now to comment on it, but I'm very clear about my identity, my ethnicity and my nationality. I would consider myself to be British Asian. I was born in England. I've been schooled in England. I love England. I support the England football team. But I would never describe myself as English. To me, there is something precious about that element of identity. And Englishness is something to do with heritage. It's something to do with ancestry. It's something to do with ethnicity, dare I say. My parents were not born in England. My grandparents were not born in England. And for that reason, I would never consider myself to be English. I think there needs to be a lineage that connects me to the English people, which isn't there. So I don't see that as a bad thing. It's just that I'm different. So I am British Asian. I'm proud to be British. I have a British passport, and my nationality is proudly British. But I also recognise my Asian heritage. My mum is from Mauritius. My dad is from Kenya. They grew up under the British Empire, actually. But they have, they've given me a different aspect to my identity. So I don't think I can call myself English. And I revere the English people. I love English culture, English history, England. But just because I was born in England, I don't think that's enough to make me English.
And that's what a lot of people are saying at the moment. They say there's no magic soil that can make you an English person from being there. I guess I never thought about this. I'm 36 now. I suppose in 35 years of being in England and always considering myself to be English, that many people would not consider me to be English. And I don't think I'd thought about what English meant, because I just thought of it as a nationality that was almost synonymous, apart from it being a part of, with British. Like, my nationality is British, but it might also be English. But I suppose English is not a nationality, is it?
No, not really. So British, we're British as nationality. We have British passports. We don't have English passports.
But it's a country.
It's England? A country. Yeah, it is a country. But look at other countries. And I think what divides people on this debate is how conservative, I guess, you want to be about it. I take quite a deferential view of ethnicity and nationality, of Englishness. I do think you need a bit more than a geographical location to call yourself English. Just because I was born here doesn't make me English. Likewise, if I had been born in Italy, I don't think I'd be able to call myself Italian. If I'd been, and actually, according to other countries' laws, that is the case. Japan, for example, has laws which are very consistent with what I'm saying. To be Japanese, it takes more than just being born in Japan.
But if you have a Japanese passport, you're not.
To be considered Japanese, you have to have your parents to have been born in Japan. And I think even your grandparents, and only then can you actually call yourself Japanese. Now, you could apply that to Englishness and what I'm saying on Englishness. I think you actually need a couple of generations to debate on how far back you go,
right?
Because so much mixing. But I think you have to go back a couple of generations before you can truly call yourself English, like the Japanese do. And there are many other countries around the world who take a stricter, more robust view of nationality. I don't think it's right to say, well, you were born here, you're all right to call yourself English. I think we need to take a less liberal perspective on nationality, on culture, on identity. That's part of the problem. It leads into my general premise, which is that multiculturalism has failed. We've been a free-for-all. It's very good that we're a welcoming country. It's lovely that many people have come over centuries to Britain and made their home. But I do think we need to start saying, we need to be able to define what it is. What is our common culture? We have to be clear. And the actual fact that there's such a live debate about what it is to even be English, I think demonstrates the fact that we've taken too liberal a view about what it is to be in this country. And that's part of the problem, actually.
It's hard for me because I always just saw myself as English, and I'm a massive England football fan. And I told everyone I've ever met in other parts of the world, oh yeah, I'm English. I wouldn't say British. That feels like a sort of passporty, airporty thing. It feels like my culture English. And then I guess if you go back, how far back, as you said, a lot of people disagree about how far back you go. Because then are we talking about Anglo-Saxons? Are we talking about the various other things that make up an English ethnicity? And then I worry for myself, I mean, Jewish. What does Jewish mean? There have been Jews in England since 1066. And then there are people who might say they're Anglo-Saxon, but actually, oh, well, I've got an Irish grandparent. And then who's more English? And that's why I think it's so ethereal that it's almost nonsensical. I don't know.
I think we have to talk about it because we can't have a situation where anything goes. that's part of the problem as to why we've got such a diluted and almost non-existent sense of cultural unity in this country. People are literally making it up as they go along as to what it is to be British, what it is to be English. And I think strong countries have a strong identity.
But why can't we push the strong identity rather than think of it as hooked onto a kind of ancestry?
Because I think that's one way of defining. We first need to define what it is, and we are struggling to agree on the definition at the moment. And I think we need to be clear about the definition of nationality, ethnicity, and who is who and what everybody is, and then we can move forward. But I think at the moment it's so fluid, it's so multicultural, where everything goes, anything goes. We've got people who are coming into this country who are avowedly against British values. I mean, I detest that term because it's such a vague, unhelpful term. It can mean all sorts of things, but they don't like Britain. They detest our history. They don't like the British people. They don't want Britain to succeed, and yet they have signed up to Britishness. And I mean, that's not going to work as a long-term situation for our country. I mean, I've just come. I went to Israel last year in solidarity on October the 7th. One thing that struck me there is the people there have a very strong sense of unity, right down to the young people, old people, wealthy people, poor people, all sorts of people. They feel very united. They have a strong sense of what their identity is, and they have a strong sense of patriotism. They really love their country, so much so that young people are sacrificing their lives in defence of their country. A survey in England a few months ago, in Britain a few months ago, said that I think about less than 20% of 18 to 25-year-olds would serve our armed forces in defence of the realm. That's shocking.
Yeah.
We're not teaching young people what is great about Britain, what is great about the English people, the Scottish people, the Welsh people, the Northern Irish people, what's great about our history, our culture, what we stand for. And we're going to really lose the very important fabric of our nation if we're not careful.
It's actually really bizarre that we teach our own people to hate this country and its history. And Israel as well, I realized recently, has one of the highest birth rates in the world, which I initially assumed was related to the Hasidics there, because they have something like 20% of the Haredi Jews. And it's not. It's the secular Jews in Israel, or the secular Israeli people, who are having children at a much faster rate. And I think that probably goes hand in hand with that kind of nationalism and pride in who you are. Whereas in the UK, we're just like, oh, who cares? I'm just going to have a job and not think about those things. And is that part of why there's a feeling, and why maybe well, first Blair and then the Tories for some years felt they had to bring in Labour from elsewhere? We don't have enough people being born.
Well, we've got a very diminishing and thin sense of patriotism in this country. The St. George's flag has become a live debate as to whether it's offensive or whether it's patriotic right now. In Parliament itself, we've got MPs who are saying, well, we don't really like, we want our local council to take down the St. George's flag. We've got other MPs who are making a point of waving it with their heart and soul. It's been a topic of discussion. The fact that our national flag has become controversial reflects the fact that we have a very distorted sense of what it is to love our country. And it's not just Israel; it's India. I was traveling in India a few years ago. Again, they wave their flag at every opportunity that they get, and it's not an embarrassment or a source of shame. America, every other garden that you pass in America has a flagpole and a stars and stripes. They sing their national anthem in their schools every day. They're teaching the next generation what it is to love their country. They're proud of their history. They're optimistic about what their country represents, what its contribution is to the world. And we are so far removed from that in this country. So no wonder there are very few young people who are willing to fight for her.
It's so bizarre, the Gary Neville stuff, and he was talking about it. And if I were them, I would say, okay, you think a sort of band of racists have co-opted the flag, and okay, that maybe there is some evidence of that in some fringe parts, then reclaim it. Say, hey, I'm going to fly the flag. I don't believe in racism. I'm not against people from different skin colors, different backgrounds, but I'm now going to start flying this flag because Britain needs to do that. And they'd come out in the millions. If somebody started push, you've seen that with the Olympics and things like that. There are times when the average Briton, even lefty woke people, will start waving that flag. So why not reclaim it? I don't get it. But why was there that situation that no one can seem to answer ever? Why? I know why Blair started it. I guess it was an ideological thing. But then with the Tories, particularly Boris, why were we bringing in so many people?
Yeah, that is the $64,000 question about the last Conservative administration. Immigration was far too high, exponentially rose, and it was out of control. And I'm just talking about legal immigration. I'm not even talking about the boats, which was a separate crisis. Why? Well, I can only speak from my own experience. In June, July 2022, the ONS, Office for National Statistics, reported on the net migration figures. And as of June 2022, the UK government had issued, for the first time, in excess of 1 million work and study visas. It was the first time that it had topped 1 million. And net migration was standing at about 600,000. Compared to 2019, when we had the general election, it was at about 290, 300,000. It had almost doubled in quite a short space of time. And that was under Boris, it was under the Conservatives. I remember seeing that ONS report and being horrified. I thought we had a manifesto pledge in 2019 to cut immigration. I had voted and campaigned for Brexit in 2016 because I wanted less immigration. The 2015 manifesto under David Cameron had promised less migration. And here we are with record levels. This is going badly wrong. I went into the Home Office as Home Secretary later that year in the autumn. And I went with this crisis very much at the forefront of my mind. I spoke to the Prime Minister, Liz Truss. I spoke to then Rishi Sunak. And I said, listen, we've got a crisis. The numbers are out of control. We've got a real opportunity to fix this. Say we've got 18 months or 24 months until a general election. We can, post-Brexit, actually bring the numbers down quite quickly. You just need to give me the green light. I'm Home Secretary. I've got a great team of people at the Home Office who are ready and raring to go to exercise our new powers on our points-based system. And there's so many things that we can do. We can raise the salary threshold, which would quite quickly bring down the number of work visas. We could restrict the number of universities or student visas. So many things. I had a great plan. Liz Truss didn't want to do it. Rishi Sunak didn't want to do it. Why? That's what your question is. Why? And despite months of pleading, banging my head against the brick wall, begging, chasing the Chancellor down a corridor to try and get some agreement on this, I was basically rebuffed and blocked by the Cabinet on this proposal. I couldn't do it because the Prime Minister didn't want to do it. Why didn't Prime Minister Rishi Sunak want to cut immigration? He believed that more migrants into the country was good for the economy. And I'd have that conversation with him on a regular basis. He would say, well, Suella, you want to cut migration by 300,000? And I'd say, yes, and I can do it pretty easily. He'd say, well, that's going to affect GDP, according to the OBR, and therefore I won't be able to cut taxes. And it's a very binary choice. So if you're asking me to authorise a reduction in immigration, it's going to harm the economy, and I'm not prepared to do that. I would vociferously challenge that view. I would say, well, the OBR is wrong. It's not right that more immigrants into the country has resulted in increased economic growth, because for the last decade, we've had increased migration and we've had sluggish growth. It's also not right that the number of workers coming into the country are largely low wage, low skilled. When they're high wage and high skilled workers, they might contribute to the economy. At low wage and low skilled migrants, which is what the majority of workers coming into the country are, they depress wages. They put pressure on our public services. They are actually a net cost to the economy because of their use of social services. And they put pressure on housing and house prices. So this is actually a net cost. It's not a net benefit to the economy. He just couldn't agree with me. The Treasury wouldn't agree with me. The OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, wouldn't agree with me. And so I was a lone voice fighting a losing battle around the cabinet table. And lots of people ask me, oh, you were Home Secretary, why couldn't you stop the boats or stop migration? That's not how our government works. You could be the most charismatic, wisest cabinet member, the perfect cabinet member with a great, sparkling, beautiful plan. If the Prime Minister doesn't authorise your plan, it ain't going to happen. And so ultimately I was blocked by the Prime Minister and the cabinet, who didn't want to deliver my plan to cut migration. So that is why immigration rose and got out of control in the last few years of the Conservative government. I did manage to eke out a few, because of my constant nagging. He did eventually relent. And so in the May of 2023, Rishi was fed up with me and he said, okay, well, I'll give you a few changes. So we did get a few changes through. And that did actually lead to a consequent fall in immigration, but it was all too little too late. Much more needed to be done. It needed to be done far sooner in the parliamentary cycle. And the reason it got out of control is because there was a flawed belief running through the Conservative Party, which was more immigrants into the country is necessarily a good thing. I fundamentally disagreed with that.
It's a blind ideology.
It's a blind ideology.
It's so interesting to hear from you, because it's pretty much the first time I've heard anyone who was inside say this, because everyone goes, I don't know why we couldn't do it. And I say, was it because you thought erroneously that it was good for the economy, all of this immigration? And they say, like Liz said, it was just the deep state. You can't change anything, civil service and all of that.
No, it wasn't. I'm not one of those politicians who blames the civil servants. There were some civil servants who were obstructive on some issues, but on legal migration, as I said, we had come out of the European Union. Previously, when we were members of the EU, we couldn't have controlled inward migration because we were subject to free movement of people, one of the founding principles of the European Union. Post-Brexit, we came out, Boris got Brexit done, so we came out in 2021. And then we had the levers at our disposal. And this was my point to the Prime Ministers. I would say, listen, the boats, I know, you're very concerned about the boats. I'm really concerned about the boats. It's a crisis. But fixing the boats is really, really difficult. Stopping the boats is really, really hard. We will have to pass laws, and that's going to be very difficult with our own party, with the Lords. It's a very long process. We have to take into account the human rights aspects of it, which are very obstructive. We have the Strasbourg Court, the European Court of Human Rights, which is getting in the way. There's a lot of forces against us. We can give it a good go. And if you're not willing to, leave the ECHR, which we'll come on to later, it's going to be almost impossible to do it. Contrast that with the legal migration. This is what I would say to the Prime Ministers. We've got an open goal on illegal migration. We don't need to pass a law. We don't need to worry about the lefties in the House of Lords who will block us. We don't need to worry about human rights courts or judges. We don't need to worry about NGOs and charities trying to stop us in court. You just need to, Prime Minister, give me, the Home Secretary, the authorization. And I will literally go and kind of almost press some buttons. It's very, very simple process. Implement some measures, which would then have a benefit and a tangible benefit that we could feel quite quickly in terms of bringing the numbers down. And then, when you do have to go back to the electorate at the next election, you might have failed on the boats, but you will be able to tell the British people, when I had the power, I managed to bring down immigration. Now, give me more powers, give me a mandate to do the same with legal migration. You would have something to demonstrate to the British people that you could be trusted on immigration. So there was a political incentive for the previous Conservative Prime Ministers to do something on legal migration, because it would have given us some results to actually, evidence to the electorate. As it turned out, because my efforts were blocked and rebuffed and I was outnumbered in the cabinet, we went back to the electorate with unprecedented levels of net migration. And all trust has been broken with the British people. We can't be trusted at the moment on immigration because we made promises for the best part of 10 years. We roundly broke them, and people see that as a betrayal.
Yeah, I spoke to Matt Goodwin yesterday, and he was saying he's very in with reform, and he was saying the same thing. The trust is gone, and it makes it very difficult for the Tories now. And I sort of said, well, yeah, I get that, but isn't it a little bit like a football team? Because, they get relegated under bad management or whatever. And, they still had a few good players and things. And then now they're back and they've got a new manager. But it's difficult because the trust is, as you say, it's gone. And by the way, I agree. I've been saying this for a while about this. The stop the boats thing is a little bit of a red herring. It's very important to stop, but the legal migration is so much higher than that, and it's completely changing the face of the country.
Yeah, but in terms of numbers, the legal migration problem is the biggest crisis facing our country. The boats is, that is also unique in its scale and nature as well, because whilst the numbers are smaller, the fact that over 1,000 people a day are breaking into our country, coming here illegally. We don't have eyes on many of these people. Many of them abscond, and then we lose them into the country. Many of them will pose a public safety risk, a national security risk, and you're not a serious country if you don't know who is coming into your country. So that is, that's a multifaceted problem, harder to solve. And it's a very visible sign of state failure. We can't even control our borders. The British people deserve a lot better than what they're getting.
Do you think this is a difficult thing to talk about? But Islam, to what extent is this just made so much more complicated by Islam? A lot of people don't want to name that as a big part. I mean, it's a problem anyway, immigration, especially undocumented, or you don't know who they are and those kinds of things. But Islam, I was asked recently by human rights lawyer Clive Stafford Smith, who's very sort of globalist-y kind of guy, and he said, how has your life changed because of Islam? How's your culture changed? What do you think about that?
Well, if you look at inward migration, particularly illegal migration, a large portion of the illegal arrivals are coming from Islamic countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, and some of these people will be Islamists. Some of these people will be extremists. They will hold values which are totally at odds with British values. I use the term a lot, even though I'm not quite sure what it means sometimes. But they will have horrendous views towards women, for example, because of their culture and their origins.
Yeah. Jews, again, gays.
Towards Jews, exactly. They will be anti-Semitic, and for that will be normal. Homosexuals, they will think that being gay is a sin. They will have very extreme, dangerous views, and they will be in our country, and they'll be as a result of that, behaving in a totally unacceptable way. The grooming gang scandal is a consequence of men having wholly dangerous views towards women, because the large majority of the perpetrators of grooming gangs are Pakistani men. Pakistani Muslim men, especially in places like Rochdale, in Rotherham, in Oldham, Bradford. I visited.
Emily Maitlis would call you a racist, I think, for pointing this out.
I think she's probably been calling me a racist for the last 10 years.
And you are of a different race, so that winds me up so much for like white people to be having a go. Are your family, what do they have? What kind of culture is there? Is there a Hindu thing, or is it a thing?
So my mum is from Mauritius.
Yeah.
And my dad is from Kenya.
Yeah.
And my mum was, they are very proud children of empire. They were born in the 1940s. And just as Britain was winning the war, in fact, my granny's sister fought for the British Army. There were Mauritian soldiers posted in Egypt. So a source of great pride in our family on my mother's side. And my mother's both my parents have been very grateful to the British Empire for what Britain did for their countries. Mauritius was developed because of the British. Roads were built, ports were built, the civil service, their administration, their legal system. That was all thanks to the British the British colonizers. Same with Kenya. Kenya was developed largely because of British investment, British construction, British engineering, British administration. And so they saw the real benefits of empire. They were very grateful to Britain. It was a mother country for them. And then when my mother was 18, she was recruited by the NHS, and she got a job and she trained as a nurse in Scotland, and she worked as a nurse for 40 years in the UK. My father, he came to the UK for different reasons. He was in Kenya, and in the 60s, the Kenyan Asians were basically booted out of East Africa. It happened in Uganda, happened in Tanzania, happened in Kenya. Not as violent as some of the other countries in Kenya, but nonetheless, as a young Asian man growing up in Kenya in the 1960s, he had no prospects, no opportunities. The laws were set against someone of his ethnicity. And so the British offered him a way out and a lifeline. They gave him a British passport and they said, come to Britain. And so he found security and opportunity in Britain as a young man. And then my parents met in the UK. And they've lived their lives very humbly, with a great sense of gratitude, I think, overwhelmingly, for what Britain has given them. Britain's given them a sanctuary, and they've only wanted to repay the debt, really, that Britain has given them. So my mother got involved in the local community. She joined the Conservative Party because of Mrs. Thatcher in the early 80s, and she was a councillor for 16 years, and my father's always been a supporter of hers and local politics. So they're very community-spirited people, and, you know, they get their flags out when it's a jubilee or a coronation. Very, very proud to be British, very grateful. Overwhelmingly, it's gratitude.
It must wind you up then, a lot of the immigration with people coming in and not being that way at all. And I get told as a Jew that people know I'm Jewish and all that, and they'll tell me, oh, the right wing hates you or what. It's like that. That's not my experience at all. And the idea that we're being against immigration, that I or anyone who espouses my opinions might not like people with brown skin or black skin or something, it's mental. It's so far from reality. But I've spoken about this before. The litmus test is the dog, because I walk around with my dog. I've got a little dachshund, and she's really cute, little cream thing, and everyone loves her. She's like
What's her name?
Gnocchi.
Gnocchi.
Yeah,
like the dish.
Yeah, she looked like
Oh.
And it's my fat wife is Argentinian, so they got like gnocchi.
Oh, I
it's like
see.
a big
Okay.
dish over there.
Right.
And so I walk around with her, and it's just life now that there's lots of brown skinned people, right? Particularly in certain areas around where we all live in sort of this area. And so half of the brown skinned people come over and are just like, they adore her, and they're like, oh, I'm going to take her back to our, they seem British. They're like proper, they're funny, and like, it's lovely. And there's nothing going like, boo, different skin. But then the other half like spit and get angry and dive out the way. And loads of dog walkers are having these experiences because in Islam, they don't like dogs.
Right.
So I guess the point I'm making is, I love my dog. No, the point I'm making here is it must be so upsetting for so many people who are of Asian background who just wanted to like get their heads down, like your parents, like you, and just get on with your life and be British. And now it is going to turn some people on the right against you or against me for being Jewish. We're all sitting there going, guys, what are you doing coming in here trying to change this culture?
Yeah, listen, I think there's a real need for better integration. There are parts of the country where almost every woman is wearing a full body burqa.
Yeah.
There are parts of the country where first cousin marriage is what's happening in that population. There are parts of the country where people don't speak English. That's not England. That's not Britain. And we're really losing a sense of what has historically united this great country. Yes, we do welcome people from all over centuries. And this is this is the point. When people call people on the right as racist just for wanting to control immigration. For centuries, Britain has been extending the hand of friendship to people from all over the world, whether it's to persecuted Jews, fleeing torture and fleeing the Holocaust, or whether it's East African Asians finding sanctuary in Britain in the 1960s, or whether it's more recently Hong Kongers, Ukrainians, people fleeing war zones. They have been welcomed. And that's why I get so angry when, the lefty mainstream media types brand those of us on the right as racist just for wanting to control immigration, because it's not about racism. The British people are not a racist people.
No.
My parents' experience bears that out. your parents,
yeah.
your forefathers. That, this has been a welcoming country. There's a real sense of camaraderie for those who come here, are honest, play by the rules, contribute, and take part in good faith. But what's happened is, everything's been flung open. It's a free-for-all now, and people are coming here who actively hate our country. We haven't been vigilant enough on who is coming here, and it's all breaking down culturally, from a security point of view, from a public safety point of view, and that's why it's a crisis. It's, I use that word carefully. I don't like to throw that word around, but it is a crisis because it's going to take radical action to reverse it. The numbers are off the scale.
But what can we do without becoming illiberal?
I don't think it's about becoming illiberal. I think it's about reining in this out of control crisis and getting a sense of balance and some breathing space for the country. So we have to cut immigration drastically. Inward immigration needs to stop. It actually has to reverse. I think we need...
Well, that's what I mean. That's the thing, the deporting that a lot of people speak about. But how does one do that without rounding up a bunch of people who maybe we don't even know? Maybe they did want to settle and be part of this assimilation, all of those. And now we're going, you out. And it starts to look a bit bad.
Well, listen, I think if you look at the numbers of people in this country, we have too many people in this country. We're a finite resource. Go to any A&E, you're lucky to see a doctor in the stated 4 hours because it's packed.
But can you just start deporting people?
Well, there are many people here illegally using our services, using our, staying in accommodation that shouldn't be used for illegal migrants. And they're taking up valuable resource. Those illegal people who are here illegally need to be identified. They need to be enforced against. They need to be deported. And if we were able to make some inroad into that issue, we would start to be making progress.
See, I hate it. And we all do, the idea of deporting people. It's such a horrible thing. But I think we're in such a crisis right now that might be a resort we have to go to.
I can see why people are moved by it because there is a human aspect to it, and it's those enforcement officers and people who are involved on that front line of work. I worked with many of them at the Home Office as Home Secretary because Border Force comes under the Home Secretary's responsibilities. They're very brave people. They believe in secure borders. They want to use their powers. It's a very difficult job for them. They're often, they have to deal with very aggressive, violent people sometimes who don't want to leave. It's hard work. But look at America. Look at what Donald Trump's done in quite a short space of time. That was, again, a crisis on the southern border of America with millions of people breaking into America. And through political will, a muscular approach to border force, ICE, they call it there, and, not being squeamish about doing the right thing. Because I think that's where those in authority lose their nerve sometimes. They do think, well, this person might have a baby, so we've got to get the human rights will get involved and, we've got to... No, they came here illegally. They've broken our laws. They've broken our rules. They've jumped the queue. They behaved in a totally unacceptable way, and they're potentially putting the British people at risk, and they're using up valuable resource. Enough is enough. We need to be unforgiving about this lawlessness and the very serious national security risks that it's posing to the British people. Yeah.
There's an argument that because the reason I say that as well about, oh God, it's not nice, is I know like a large number of people watching will feel that way. As a large will also start insulting me in the comments as they do, like, oh, it's people like you're being too liberal and that's why this is all. So I get that side as well. But I guess I want those who are also agreeing with, who feel like how I do, and you probably do, and we all do, about, oh gosh, this isn't nice, to understand this is actually an emergency right now.
The problem is nice has got us into this crisis.
Yes, I agree. Reluctantly. It took me years to get here. And
that's the problem. Nice is not going to solve the problems because Britain has been too nice for too long. The British people have been too nice for too long. And that's why they're being taken advantage of. That's why we have illegal migrants running around our streets, working illegally, harming our girls, using up valuable resource. That's what nice has led to.
But with what you want to do, you're not going to be able to do this with the Tories, are you?
Well, listen, I mean, time will tell. Time will tell.
You know what the next question is.
I know. Oh, I wonder what you're going to ask.
We've actually got Nigel behind that door. Nigel, come on, mate. If Nigel came out of that door now and said, Suella, come on, it's time, what would you say?
Listen, it's a tough time for the Conservative Party. That's undeniable. You only have to look at any poll to show that the Conservative Party is struggling because of this breach of trust. I did warn about it. I warned about it for years around the cabinet table in private. And then the Prime Minister got fed up of those warnings, so he kicked me out of the cabinet. And then I warned about it publicly, and people didn't really want to hear it. And then we've had the disaster.
Are you not friends with them anymore?
I've lots of friends in the Conservative Party. Yeah, listen, we fought elections together. We worked side by side.
Could you go for dinner with like Rishi or Liz?
I don't think I'd go for dinner with Rishi, no. I don't think he'd want to go for dinner with me, no.
Liz, Boris?
I'm still in touch with a lot of them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've got I think you also got to like be mature about these things as well. Sure. So I mean, and now the disaster's happened. And the Conservative Party is licking its wounds. It's trying to rebuild, renew. Kemi, to her credit, has been very honest about the problems. She's not taking a hyper-defensive position, which I think is right. And time will tell. Time will tell whether this, profound breach of trust gets mended.
I like Kemi, but it's just an impossible job. And that's what I mean for you as well. So
you think it's not possible for
the Tories to win?
Yeah.
I don't think.
What's your prognosis for the party?
I just think everyone. I mean, it's so hard because I live in a bubble. I'm in the Twitter, YouTube sphere, but also the polls seem to suggest Reform are just going to absolutely smash it. And I just feel like, well, they could probably do with you. They could probably do with Kemi. If the Tories are a sinking ship right now anyway? Maybe in 10 years they'll be back. Who knows? But I guess maybe my question about what you'd say to Nigel Farage, maybe it's not politically astute to answer that publicly now.
Listen, I'm not defecting. If you want an answer, I'm not defecting. So, there's a lot of things I agree with on Nigel. So, he's been right about a lot of things, and I supported Brexit like he did, and he's been right on immigration. So, and a lot of things that Reform advocates are things that I agree with. My husband was a member of Reform, so we have Reform is in our household. So I'm very familiar with what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, this is the existential question for the Conservative Party. Will it come back? Will it renew sufficiently? And fundamentally, will people trust the Conservatives again? And that's something I don't think anyone knows the answer to that. No one knows the answer. Very brave person who makes predictions right now about the next general election. We saw in the last Parliament, a few years in, Boris was riding high. We were winning local elections. He had his vaccine rollout. He had a very popular. He won a by-election in Hartlepool. Which was a safe Labour seat. He was on a winning streak, and then within a matter of months, came crashing down. So things can change very quickly in politics as well.
That's true. I watch a lot of football, and often they would ask Harry Kane when he was leaving if he was going to leave Tottenham, and he might say something like, he wouldn't have said defecting, but he might have said, I'm not leaving. Eventually he did, because Tottenham were just not going to win anything, and he couldn't do very much with Tottenham. Whereas at Bayern Munich, where he went, he could win things. So there are things you want to do. Obviously, I can see how passionate you are about doing it. And it might be a situation where in a year's time or so, it might look like, I've got to go to Bayern Munich, which is Reform.
I like your analogy. Yeah. I wouldn't be so bold to compare myself to Harry Kane. He's one of our great footballers, our great winners.
Good at football?
No.
And some ethno-nationalists would say he's not English because he has Irish ancestry.
Well, I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, it is a complex. I wonder he was born in England. I wonder whether his parents were born in England and his grandparents.
I don't know.
Yeah, you can be part English, I should say. People can be part English.
Scored a lot of goals. Yeah.
A great player for us.
I think it remains to be seen then with the Reform thing.
What can I ask you?
Yeah.
How have you gone to Bayern Munich?
Yeah.
You've been transferred, have you?
Yeah.
Have you?
Well, look, me.
Were you originally with Spurs? What's your voting history? What's your political
I didn't
history?
used to vote for years because I was
Right.
one of those who said it's all just the same shit.
Right.
You know. Then I started to become. Well, also I lived abroad for like 10 years.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Once I moved back, and that was another reason I went sort of this anti-woke kind of way. I was never woke exactly. I just wasn't that political. But when you go away and you see, you're able to come back and see where that Overton windows moved. So I came back and suddenly everyone was saying like, oh yeah, men can just go in women's toilets. And I was like, wait, hang on. What's just happened? I've been away in like a dream. And you know how fast 10 years goes when you look back at it? It's like, it was a click of my fingers. And then I was suddenly in a country where men can go in women's toilets. And I would tell Argentines about that and they would be like, no, don't be silly. And I said, no, they're doing that in England. And now they're locking people up for speech. And now we've got mosque after mosque after mosque and we're called for prayer in the streets. This is not, and you go back to Argentina and it was like, oh, these are what Argentinian people look and sound and act like. And then I go back to England and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? So that is what moved me in that sense. And then it was more voting. I voted Tory last time.
In 2024, last year.
Yeah, because everybody was so, I was just so concerned about Labour and the sort of Islamo left. And I thought Tory was probably my best bet at that point at failing to stop that. So I can float around. And right now Reform are winning. If it got to a point in 2 years and it was like, oh, hang on, it's all changed, Tories are about to win, then I'll be like, well, I'll get on that boat then. As long as they are hard on immigration, that's what everyone cares about. And when I speak to people like Ian Dale and all, they say, no, it's the economy everyone's worried about. Obviously, everyone is worried about the economy. That's not what I'm seeing, though. It's immigration is the number one issue.
Absolutely, I agree.
So I just think, yeah, okay, I could float around. And I think maybe you could.
And if there were a general election tomorrow, how would you vote?
Reform.
Based on the state of play.
Yeah, and there's a lot of criticism. I've had Ben Habib on here, and there's the criticism from the left, there's the criticism from the right, which is Ben Habib and Advance and Rupert Lowe and all of those. And they say, hey, Farage has gone soft. There are issues about Farage. There's his history as well. I mean, there's a strange history with Farage around sort of Nazi parties. I don't want to get that wrong in case he sues me or something.
I don't think that's right.
Do you know?
I don't think that's been corroborated. I think that's. I don't think that's right. No.
Well, if it's not right, I'll take out me saying that. But there was a history, and there were reports of Jews at school saying they were bullied by him. I think he denies all of these things, but it's all a bit, oh gosh, I don't know. But at the moment, that's where I'd go, and maybe you should.
I've answered the question.
We will see. So one of the things to stop the boats is the ECHR.
Yes.
What the hell is? And that video was great because you're just like you're in one place walking and then you're walking in the next place. And I'm not Greta Thunberg, so I don't care that you've been moving around just for these little steps. But I couldn't believe what had been put into it, and you were very natural. You're very good at that. So what were you basically saying? What is the ECHR?
So great question, because not a lot of people realise what the ECHR is, or how that it's blocking and thwarting our basic governmental functions. So we can't stop the boats because of the ECHR. This is the European Convention on Human Rights. And linked to it is the European Court of Human Rights, which is in Strasbourg. Now, the ECHR was a very noble document that the UK was one of the original signatories to in the aftermath of World War II. And it was in it are protected fundamental human rights. So Article 2 protects the right to life. So you and I have enshrined in that convention the right to life. And so that's, the state can't just kill someone arbitrarily, which it was doing, which the Germans were doing during the Holocaust. And there were threats of that happening with communism after World War II. Article 3 is the prohibition against torture. So again, individuals are protected against torture. A very good thing. No one's going to disagree with that. All sorts of things. The right to a private life, the right to free expression, the right to a fair trial, all the things that define a civilized country. And the UK signed up to it in the aftermath of World War II as a aspirational commitment and basically to try and prevent a repeat of World War II, the Holocaust, and to prevent the kind of surge of authoritarianism. Fast forward 80 years, that document has been distorted, it's been perverted, and it's become a burden on many states which signed up to it. And that's because of things that have been added along the way. So we had a court added a few years into our membership of the ECHR, this court in Strasbourg. It started off as an okay institution, but it became, over time, politicised, interventionist, and quite interfering in the UK's affairs. It stopped UK governments who've been democratically elected from doing things that they had a mandate to do, for example. David Cameron got into a very big fight with the European Court of Human Rights when he was Prime Minister because he wanted to ban prisoners from getting the right to vote. The European Court said that's illegal. And for a period of 10 years, there was a lot of wrangling. That court, a foreign court, foreign judges, far away, was telling David Cameron, a democratically elected Prime Minister, what he could and couldn't do in his own country.
That is mad.
That is mad. And another example, the boats. Boris tried to stop the boats by deporting illegal migrants to Rwanda. You'll remember the scenes of the planes on the tarmac. That was a legitimate agreement that the UK government had entered into with Rwanda. Governments do that every day. Boris had a mandate to do what he needed to do to stop the boats and stop illegal migration. And yet it was the European Court of Human Rights that interfered at the last minute and stopped those planes from taking off. And that was the fatal blow to the whole Rwanda policy in the end. We never recovered after that. We were never able to get the planes off the ground, literally, because of human rights. We've not been able to, there's so many areas. Our veterans, this is what I talk about in the film, brave British veterans who fought for Queen and country in the Troubles in Northern Ireland against the IRA, doing the right thing, following orders, protecting the realm, killing terrorists, IRA terrorists, many years later, as elderly men, have been chased through the courts with charges of murder.
Wow.
Because of the Human Rights Act and the European Convention on Human Rights. These men should be enjoying their retirement. Instead, there's one case where one veteran has been under investigation 5 times, despite being cleared and cleared and cleared again, but because of the persistence of some lefty human rights lawyers, he is being hounded through the courts for being a brave soldier and killing an IRA terrorist back in the day in Northern Ireland. So there are many areas.
We're disgusting to our veterans compared to how they are in America.
Yes.
So I've started doing it's so American. It doesn't feel very English, but I actually, when I see them or someone who's in the armed services, I go over and say thank you for your service. It makes me cringe because it's very American, and but I do it anyway. And they're always happy. They're so happy. The problem is you never know. It could just be someone like dressed up like that, and then you're like, it's embarrassing or something. But
if they're in fancy dress, that is embarrassing.
Yeah.
But if they're not. Then I think that's lovely. That's very nice that you say that, because I do actually think we don't say thank you enough to our veterans and our serving soldiers, men and women who, they put their lives on the line.
Yeah.
And I know several soldiers who fought in Afghanistan, in Iraq, Falklands, what they've seen, what they've done, it's changed their lives. Some of them have come back with life-changing injuries. And the state actually doesn't support them enough when they come back to give them opportunities to have a prosperous and fulfilling life. They are somewhat squandered, I think.
So how can we just get out of the ECHR?
So those are the problems with the ECHR.
Yeah.
We've got this foreign court getting in the way of our government. I have been calling now for several years for the UK to leave the ECHR. I was the first sitting cabinet minister to do so as Home Secretary, much to the dismay of my cabinet colleagues. But I think it's the right thing to do because it's the only solution really to this enormous problem that we're facing. There are many people who say we can't leave because of Northern Ireland. Because the Good Friday Agreement, which is the foundation of peace in Northern Ireland, makes reference to the ECHR in the text of the document. So they say, if you pull out of the ECHR, then you're going to rip up the Good Friday Agreement, and that's going to lead to, a resurrection of troubles again. That would be very bad. Some people say, if you leave, you're going to be an outcast pariah nation like Russia or Belarus, who were kicked out of the ECHR. and you're going to be in the same club as them, and these are really bad countries, and it's going to harm our international reputation. And there are some people who say that we can reform. Let's stay in and try and reform it from within. None of those objections stand up to scrutiny, really. We've tried reform. Rishi Sunak tried reform. Tony Blair tried reform. David Cameron tried reform. The problem is you've got over 30 countries around largely Europe who are members of the ECHR. It's impossible to get agreement, a bit like the EU. Secondly, it won't harm our international reputation. People said that about Brexit. And actually, it didn't stop us striking over 70 trade deals with many countries around the world. It didn't stop us being a member of the G7 or the Five Eyes. It didn't. That was a red herring. And lastly, it won't affect the Good Friday Agreement. It won't affect peace in Northern Ireland. And my paper that I wrote goes into a lot of detail about the nature of the Good Friday Agreement, how it's already been changed on many occasions in the last 20 years.
And you're a barrister, you know your stuff.
I was a barrister, yes, exactly. And
does one no longer be a barrister once they're not?
No, you could. There are some MPs who continue to practice as a barrister.
Okay, then you're not a barrister anymore because you're not.
I'm not registered as a barrister anymore. I did. I worked as a barrister for 10 years, and then I became an MP. And I thought I wanted to just be an MP. I didn't want to do both. But there are some MPs who do both. At the same time. And yes, and actually, my views on the ECHR are informed by my experience as a barrister. When I was a barrister, over 10 years ago, I used to do a lot of cases involving immigration. And I used to defend the Home Office in court. So it was Home Secretary Theresa May at the time. And I would be doing cases to defend the Home Office's decisions to deport or remove people who shouldn't be here. And time again, the person on the other side would use human rights. They would use Article 3. Article 3 this is an example of how it's been distorted. I remember one case. It was a man who had a chronic illness. And he said, if you send me back to Zambia, it's going to be a violation of Article 3. It's going to be torture. Because Zambia doesn't have the same healthcare facilities as the UK. And I'm not going to be able to get the same medication there free of charge. I'm not going to be able to get the same medication there. And therefore, for you to send me to Zambia, that's going to be a violation of my human rights. And that used to pass muster in some cases. So that really informed my view that the notion of torture has been diluted and expanded so much and so far beyond what was originally intended that it's become a farce. And so our asylum system has become a farce. That's why so many people get to stay in the country. We do try and deport them. We do try and detain them, but they will almost always use human rights laws against the Home Office, against the British state.
There was a chicken nugget story, I think.
There was a chicken nugget story, yes. And my paper, we list so many cases of these absurd outcomes. There was a rapist who suddenly discovered that he was gay after raping a woman. But he pleaded that he was gay in court. He was a foreign rapist, I should say. And that to go back to, I think it was Jamaica, that would be a violation of his human rights because they don't support homosexuality there. It's made the UK a laughingstock. And so reform's not possible. It won't affect our international. It will actually enhance our international reputation. There are countries like America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, who are not members of the ECHR. They manage quite adequately without the ECHR to, protect civil liberties. And so we don't need it to be some kind of acceptable nation in the world. And it won't affect the Good Friday Agreement. And so I therefore say, we've got to rip the plaster off. We've got to, tweaking, again, being nice and tweaking and waiting for 35 other countries to agree with us is not going to work. It's just going to protract the problem. And so we need to be bold. We need to be honest about the solution. We need to do it. We need to actually make a promise and deliver it.
Are you like in Kemi's ear, nudging her about this? Is she already on board? Or?
Well, the Conservative Party has now, as of last week, announced that it supports leaving the ECHR as well. It's been dragged to this position, I think, over a few years. And it's the current view of the Conservative Party. But, you know, it's very good that the Conservative Party now agrees with me on the ECHR. And I welcome the commitment.
I mean, yeah, this is the thing. You were ahead of a lot of people on this stuff. So whoever's in power next, I want you to be part of that and to be firm on these things. Tell me, I've got. You know what I wanted to ask, actually? You were named after a character in Dallas. Now, this is interesting as well, because one thing I've noticed is immigration, right? A lot of black people, a lot of Asian people used to have English names, like in the 50s and 60s. And nowadays they don't. Do you know what I mean?
I haven't noticed that, but
you see it with
say a bit
of
more.
Like back in, all the footballers were called like Ian, right? Ian Wright.
Yeah.
You know, and now it tends to be sort of from a country of origin. I think that's another example of how we've denigrated our own culture so much. We've not encouraged people to assimilate at all. People are coming in, they don't. Whereas Suella, because also Suella, did you think about that? You know, in politics, it rhymes with Cruella, and people could get you with that. Do you wish it was Suellen sometimes?
Well, so my mother chose Suellen
Yeah.
to be my name because she loved Dallas.
Yeah.
That is the truth. And so I started out my life as Suellen. And then at school, the teachers didn't like the hyphen in my name. And so they found it very inconvenient. And so they actually came up with the alternative, which was Suella. And they started using Suella on my books and on the, you know, the hook where you put your jacket and that kind of thing. And that stuck. And my mum thought, well, that's all right. I don't really mind. So I was basically, Suella came to me through convenience.
That's interesting. And then maybe inconvenience later.
But I hadn't thought about the Cruella, Suella rhyming. But yeah, a lot of people do say it.
Yes, you've heard that said. Well, of course. I mean, that's what they, you know, people say horrible things to me, but luckily it doesn't rhyme my name with, you know, I think someone used to call me Andrew Mould or something.
That's
stupid.
Not very nice.
Well, you know, you lived, don't you? It's fine. How do you handle the flack?
As I said, I think politicians have a thick skin. I think you've got to focus on the fact that it's a privilege to be in this position and have a platform and be free to speak your mind. And when you take a very vivid position on debates, which I tend to do, I don't really like sitting on the fence, you're going to necessarily upset half the people. So, you know, some people will really agree with you, some people will vehemently disagree with you. Don't take a side if you don't want to take the flak. So I'm very aware of the consequences, but I do believe that I owe that honesty to the people who vote for me. I really don't like politicians who fudge and who speak in mealy-mouthed, vague, technocratic ways where you don't really, they say words, but you don't understand what they mean. Keir Starmer, I'm afraid, a lot of the Labour government are very much like that. They don't want to upset, particularly Keir Starmer. He's a very big culprit of this. You know, he'll speak in kind of management speak and in a very generic, clinical, dry, uninspiring way. It doesn't mean anything. And then you come out none the wiser when you've listened to him. You don't know what he actually means.
People don't like it, do they?
People don't like it. And they've had enough of it. They want to know what their politicians think, and they want to be able to take a view on the basis of what they hear. They don't want to be left wondering, because it actually implies dishonesty, and weakness. Keir Starmer communicates in that very vague, non-committal, fudgy way because he doesn't want to upset one side, so he doesn't want to take the other side, and he also doesn't actually know what he believes on a lot of things. I think that's also the problem.
It's like, have you seen some of his tweets about deporting people? It's like it's further than like the far right. Yeah. And it's like, did he even write that? Like, it's capital letters. We will fucking kill anyone who's in this country. It's like, Keir, you didn't say that. You know, you said bring back the sausages. That's all Keir's ever said. Bring the sausages back. But I don't know what to do with that guy. That's what I was talking about at the beginning. A lot of politicians, when I've met them, because I didn't used to meet politicians, and recently I've met, and a lot of them are just sort of like this sort of robotic. That's why I said autistic. But I don't know if he is, and I'm not having a go at autistic people, because I'm thinking everyone's going to have a go at me. But he does seem something.
Well, he seems a total embarrassment, a danger to our country, and I despair whenever I think about him running our country. That's what he is to me.
Yeah,
I'm afraid.
He's a plonker.
Also put that way, yes.
Yeah, I've got one more question for you, but first, where can people do you want people to follow you? Should I see that video?
Yes, on my X feed. So it's at Suella Braverman, and I have a Facebook page as well. And you can write to me at suella.braverman.mp@parliament.uk.
That's risky.
Is that risky? Well, yeah, my
not.
team will be, Suella, we're already dealing with thousands of emails. Yes, I mean, people do write to me from all over the country. I'm very, you say, how do I deal with the flack? I'm also incredibly uplifted when people say thank you and say, you speak for us, and thank you for your courage on speaking up for Israel. I lost my job basically for speaking up against anti-Semitism. I said the hate marches were out of control almost this time last year. I said that the police chief was letting down the Jewish community. I said that anti-Semitism was being tolerated, and the Prime Minister didn't agree with me, so he kicked me out of the cabinet. Would I say it again? Absolutely. Because we've tolerated these marches for 2 years, anti-Semitism, celebrations of anti-Semitism on the street, Jewish people scared to cross the road, unprecedented attacks on the Jewish community, culminating in the tragedy in Manchester only a few weeks ago, chanting jihad on the street, chanting from the river to the sea. Sadiq Khan comes out and says that's not anti-Semitic. Of course it's anti-Semitic. It's people calling for the erasure of Jewish people and Israel from the map. If that's not anti-Semitic, I don't know what is. And so, what was the point I was making? Yeah, I will. I'm very grateful when people write into me and they say thank you, because I think we have to take a stand. Being honest is really important in politics. There are many politicians who do take a stand, and they face the consequences for it far more than I do. But I think it's the least we owe the British people: honesty and authenticity in our politics.
Yeah, the anti-Semitism's become very scary, and I mean the Jews love you. They love that you speak about this stuff, and so many won't. And that is sort of Islamo left at the moment. And that's been scary. I mean, Jews saw that, just as you saw a lot of the immigration issues and these things before. All the Jews saw this coming, or not all, about half the Jews saw this coming 10, 15, 20 years ago, and always being told, look out for the far right. And it was like, well, really? This is just not my experience. Obviously, there are racist far right people they're so rare. They're so rare. But it was always that left. It was always the people I was at university studying literature with. It was those people that I was like, oh my God, one day these guys, they're like ideologues. These are strange people. And now they've made this alliance, which we've seen in Iran, Afghanistan, Lebanon. We've seen that happen, the Red-Green Alliance. Yeah. It's the history repeating itself, and no one wants to name it. So thank you for doing so.
Well, you've articulated it really well. There is this convergence of militant left-wing activism, Islamism, sectarianism, anti-Semitism, combined also with extreme transgender ideology and net zero fanaticism. And there's this confluence. I mean, the Green Party, for example, is a great example. The Green Party has got members of its party who are Islamists and who are extreme on the anti-Semitism, Israel, Gaza issue.
When he won his seat, Mothin Ali, to wave a Palestinian flag for one thing, and then to also scream Allahu Akbar when he won, that is meant. I mean, no matter what you might say, God is great. Okay, that's what it means. That he should know, the British people that he's just been elected to represent, what that means to them, because they just think of 7/7. They think of Manchester bombing. And to hear that sends chills down your spine. Whether it means a different thing to him, I'm open to that being true, but it still shows a remarkable lack of understanding of actual people in this country that he's supposed to represent.
Absolutely, I agree. And, it's the same with, and this is the other thing, people say, oh, these marches, they're not anti-Semitic and they're not hate marches. Israel, just look at the last few days and weeks. Israel's withdrawn from Gaza. There's a ceasefire. The Palestinian Hamas terrorists have been released and they're still marching.
Yeah.
They're still marching. They should be downing their placards and putting down their banners.
Celebrating that
they should be, yeah. And yet they're still demonizing Israel. They're still harassing Jews and they're still being extremist and anti-Semitic. So this is about anti-Semitism.
Ignoring the actual sort of Christian genocides going on in places like Nigeria, Syria.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mad. The number of Middle Eastern countries, even now that no one even seems to know about this, that seem to be at war with one another on their borders, all sorts of issues going on in Afghanistan, Syria. No one cares. You don't hear a peep out of these people. So, yeah.
As Douglas Murray put it so well, Israel's the only country that's not allowed to win a war.
Yeah, well, that's it. That does seem to be the case. It's mad. Anyway, who's a heretic you admire?
Who's a heretic? I'd say Nigel Farage, actually.
Okay. What about him?
What I do admire about Farage is that he has been consistent and he's been right. I first came across Nigel Farage 10 years ago in the 2015 general election when I first stood for Parliament. He was then leading UKIP. And he was campaigning for a referendum on the EU. Cameron didn't want to know, Conservative Party didn't want to know, very resistant to it. It was only because of pressure from Nigel Farage that we even had a Brexit referendum. He's the one who pushed it. On immigration, he's been right about immigration. And he's been consistent. On ECHR, he's been the first one to call for withdrawal of the ECHR. I have to give him, I wish I was the first, but I was the first in the Conservative Party, but he's first mainstream politician to call for it. And, through his sheer determination, resilience and consistency, he's shifted the Overton window you mentioned before. He's shifted British politics such that we've got Keir Starmer desperate to wave a flag these days.
Yeah, I know.
With the Labour Party running scared of reform, with the Conservative Party now announcing a policy to leave the ECHR. I'd like to claim the credit. It's not me, it's Farage. Farage has pushed the Conservative Party to the right. So, he's been consistent, and even in the face of smears of racism, being called a Nazi, being called all sorts of horrific things, he has not backed down. And that does take a lot of courage. And so, he has been a heretic.
Yeah.
And, he's encountered a huge amount of, as I say, backlash and mudslinging, and he's not been put off for it. And that is the nature of heresy, isn't it? It's standing apart from the crowd, calling out the truth, and continuing steadfastly, nonetheless, on your mission.
I think I'm with him as well, and I think he probably is the most influential politician in the last 50 years or something. It's interesting though, because if they had asked Harry Kane, are you going to leave for Bayern Munich? And then he said, no, I never leave. And then they go, so who's your favourite club? And he said Bayern Munich.
Well, I didn't say that.
Who's your? Well,
I haven't said what my favourite club is. I haven't said, I'm a member of the Conservative Party. I've got a great team of Conservative actives.
I'm playing for Spurs till my contract runs out.
I've got a great team of Conservatives down in Fareham, Waterlooville.
Farage and Waterlooville.
Everyone's working really hard, and it's a tough time. It's a tough time for the Conservative. But you asked me who's a heretic I admire. I got to say, right now in British politics, he's been proven right and he's been consistent. And I think consistency is what builds trust.
It's a great heretic. People, please go and follow Suella Braverman. We've got the X page, we've got the Facebook, we've got the video I want you guys to see. We'll link that below, and write nice things to her, please. And comment below. What do you think of? We discussed so much interesting stuff, so please leave your comments down below. We do read them. I'll ask Suella to read them so she can see them all there. Hit the like and keep watching this channel.